Let me join the CECED in welcoming the distinguished guests on the dais, and as also all of you, ladies and gentlemen, this morning. The compeer mentioned about the AUD logo and said that it's a tree. I would like to sort of add a little footnote there and say it's not just a tree. It's actually the taken from the Sanchi panel of the 3rd century BC. It's a Buddhist Bodhi symbol, and we selected it for two purposes. One, of course, the most obvious one, that Ambedkar, in whose name this university is created, is associated with Buddhism. And second, and that in fact was much more a well thought out kind of a choice of that symbol, we thought that we should stand for engaged scholarship. Because Buddhism, one thing we have learned from Buddhism is that it's about engagement. It's not disengagement. So it's about engaged scholarship. So we were particular that whatever we generate, create, transact on the university campus should have something to do with life, should have something to do with humanity, should have something to do with the manner in which ordinary people live. And in so doing, we tried to create structures and institutions within the university. And in this, I must tell you that we were born when the stars were very favorably configured. And that was one of the consequence of this favorable stellar configuration that marked our time of birth is the fact that about the same time we started life was also the time when Professor Vinitha Kaul was retiring from the World Bank. It was just a fortuitous circumstance which we sort of grabbed this opportunity and sort of took her on board and never regretted. And in fact, we have always looked up to her for all guidance. And it's not just the Center for Early Childhood Education Development and the School of Education Studies that she gave leadership to, but she participated and gave a whole lot of gravitas and dignity to the manner in which the university carried out its various functions. So let me take this opportunity in particularly expressing my sense of appreciation for Professor Vinitha Kaul here and her team. And also her team, the team that she has put together and whose effort and whose intellect and whose involvement has actually shown this day to us, the day when they are almost finishing the first stage of this longitudinal study they have initiated and whose learnings they are sharing with all of us. And that has been made possible only through this wonderful team that Professor Kaul has put together. Another part of this favorable stellar configuration that characterizes AUD's Kundali is the fact that we have a government at the moment and which seems to be receptive to and in fact looking forward, pushing us to sort of do the right things. I am reminded of a similar moment in history in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. In the city government of Sao Paulo, there was a rare minister, and his name was Paulo Freire. So Paulo Freire, the philosopher, the educator, became a minister in the city government of Sao Paulo. And those professionals who have worked with him have always told some of us, and I've heard this from the people who have actually from the horse's mouth, that it has been a wonderful time for the city of Sao Paulo to look at its own its own inequalities and challenges that characterized the education situation there. And as an education minister, Paulo Freire made an enormous impact in the policies of the city of Sao Paulo. I think we are in a similar moment here, it appears. So I would consider this as a great opportunity for Ambedkar University Delhi to sort of rise to the occasion and make use of this opportunity for do what we can in order to ensure that this momentum that has been created through popular aspiration for education, that momentum which is actually distilled into the political agenda of the polity in Delhi today, that momentum, that very same momentum should actually be the engine to drive research and drive academic activities in universities like us. And we consider ourselves to be Delhi's university. Because we are Delhi's own university, so we would like to work in the area of not only education but also environment, in which I think we are trying to develop a biodiversity, a park. We are collaborating with the Delhi Development Authority to create that. We would like to work in the area of public health. We would like to work in the area of urban development and urban ecology, and so on and so forth. So this is an opportunity we would certainly like to make use of, because one never knows. These are God-given, and it never comes too often, these opportunities. I mean, in fact, being asked to constitute a university, being asked to establish a university is itself a very rare opportunity which has come to some of us. And we are lucky to be part of the founding team of the Ambedkar University, Delhi. So this is somehow, how do I say, a trust which has been put on our shoulders, and then I think we must learn to live up to it. On the theme of these 2 days conference, I just wanted to add one perspective, and that perspective essentially comes from my training as an education person, as an educator, as a pedagogue. And that's what the critical sociologists have taught me. So we seem to be almost saying that school is some kind of an immutable given, and it's for us to make the society, the community, the parents, the family, the children to be ready for it. As though school is a mountain and all the Muhammads have to come to it. And I would tend to think that we need to really think about the school in a little more problematic manner. And I would therefore problematize this whole idea of school readiness a little bit. And you have in some of your sessions, and tomorrow particularly, you're addressing this question of whether it's the child readiness of schools rather than school readiness of child that we need to really look at. And this concern stems out of the history of schooling in India, and that essentially is also built on the incredible, we are known to be incredible India, by the way. When the tourism department tells us that we are an incredible India, I really feel one aspect of incredibility in India is India's inequality. We are incredibly unequal society. And, so that is something which one should be seriously concerned about. And we, in some sense, naively think that school is something which is going to mitigate this or take care of this inequality. But frankly, the school's own DNA is not meant for this. School's own DNA is actually meant to exacerbate and reinforce inequalities when they exist. When I was young, that was the time in the state of Kerala, there was no fee-charging private schools in the 1960s. All the schools were government schools or government-aided schools. Social inequality did remain at that point in time also. The real lines of social stratification ran along the boundary wall of the school. Some children could be in school, some children could not be in school. So the major social division was between those who could go to school and those who could not go to school. Today, that's not the case. The school system has expanded in such a manner that it apparently gives, it inheres within it all the various strata of society. But in the process, what has happened is that a relatively homogeneous system called schooling has got completely diversified into many streams and channels and institutions of schooling. So the question is not whether who goes to school anymore. It is who goes to which kind of school. So when this kind of question comes, and what the minister said, and also earlier, what was mentioned earlier, when Dr. Arsenault also mentioned about the private-public school dichotomies, it gives a myth that there is something great that's happening in the private schools, and the public schools will never be able to catch up with it. This is not just about the schooling alone, it's also about the health system. The public health system, public education system, all these are essentially suffering from a major malady, and the malady stems out of one of the causes for this malady, or probably one of the earlier symptoms of this malady, was the middle classes at some point abdicated these systems. The middle class decided that they will pull out their children from these systems, from the school system or from the public health system for that matter. The moment middle class abdicates a public system, the possibility of negotiating quality with the system also gets undermined enormously, because there's nobody to negotiate quality. I'm very happy that the minister is taking the initiative for re-establishing the sanctity of the Parent-Teachers Association meetings. I have seen Parent-Teachers Association meetings as a part of my research in private schools as well as in public schools. It's a world difference. There's a world of difference. In the private school settings, usually the parent-teachers meeting is actually like a reunion of an old, it's like an old children's club, because there's a class unity that combines the teachers as well as the parents. Whereas here in public schools, most of the time there is an enormous class difference. The minister alluded that to, or mentioned about this boss superior subordinate relationship that exists between the teacher and the student. So there is the public school system or public health system is characterized by the enormous social distance that exists between the providers and the recipients. And that social distance creates a certain amount of alienation, and that alienation in some sense determines the quality of the processes involved. So in a way, it's an acid test to the quality of public school or any system for that matter is when the teacher send her own child to the same school she teaches. Or for that matter, the doctor who works in a public health system would actually get his own kith and kin treated in the same hospital or same system of hospital he works in or she works in. So this social distance, in my opinion, needs to be addressed. And I'm very happy that at the moment the government seems to be addressing this issue squarely. And what needs to be understood, and has been coming out of the study very clearly, is that the performance of kids in the school does not essentially come out of factors which obtain within the school system, but it is already predetermined by the time they actually enter the school system. Because of research that Dr. Berman mentioned, and that indicates that there is a brain plasticity, and there is a possibility of early cognition and early nourishment, early nutrition, early supportive emotional environment that would depend on that would essentially predicate or cause the later performance or later activities, the later potential of the child. So there is a critical path through which the child develops. The early years of development determines the threshold of achievement that a child, when grown up, can actually aspire to achieve. So in that sense, the 6 to 14 window that our rights framework has taken up in the RTE is actually, in some sense, grossly inadequate. Because by the time the child reaches the age of 6, her fate is already sealed. So it becomes imperative that we need to have an advocacy work that should extend the scope of the right to education, and not just education, right to early childhood care. Only this would probably ensure that there will be a sort of a level playing field by the time they reach schooling. Otherwise, the children you must understand the schooling process is a partnership between family and school. In middle class children, for instance, I know for a fact that my colleagues take 2 years childcare leave when the child is in the secondary schools. Because the mother has to sit with the child and to prepare the child for the board examination. I always pity the child, though, I must say, because this will be quite a terrible situation where the mother is breathing down the neck of the child on a day-to-day basis. But all the same, this shows the whole notion of what is considered to be good schooling is essentially hinging on the kind of support the family gives. Whether this notion of good schooling that we have is what it should be is a different question. I think we need to really also begin to question our notions of good schooling. And the minister very correctly pointed a finger at these wrong notions. And when it is extended downwards, the board examinations requirements would determine or dictate the content and the scope of the curriculum in the secondary school. The secondary school's requirement would dictate elementary school. Elementary school's requirements would dictate the structure of preschool. So this kind of an oppressive influence which the board examination actually exerts on even preschool, and which actually forces preschool teachers to pack the child's time with meaningless chores related to scholastic performance in school later, which does not probably either make any sense to the child. On the contrary, it is, the child incurs an enormous opportunity cost in terms of her not being able to develop all those factors she would have otherwise developed had she been left out to play. So all these, I think, are important considerations that we need to have. And for all this to happen, if it is not important for the downward extension of school to the preschool, it is actually the upward extension of early childhood education, development, education care to primary schools. That is important. We need to really upwardly extend the ethos of a good early childhood environment to primary schools and beyond. There should be a seamless progression, transition for the child from home to the early childhood environment to primary school and so on. And that is probably the only way to ensure that a child is not disadvantaged because the Head Start. Some children are provided because the families can afford to do it. What determines the quality in the school system? We are convinced that no amount of attention that is given to curriculum development and textbook development alone is going to determine what will get transacted in school. The teacher is the single critical factor that would determine quality. So the preparation of teachers and preparation of teacher for that profession, not to do an assembly line work. Teaching is not an assembly line work, it is a profession. If that indeed is so, then the preparation of teachers need to be emphasized much more. And we hope in the Center for Early Childhood Education Development and the School of Education of Ambedkar University, Delhi, hope to put together systems of teacher education which should be more sensitive to the need of preparing a comprehensive, taking up a comprehensive approach in preparing the person and the professional in teachers. and this is something which we will look forward to. This is a promise that we are giving to ourselves, that this is a contribution that we'll make to the people of Delhi. I'm so thankful to the minister and the distinguished guests and all of you for having come here and added meaning and seriousness to the deliberations that are going to happen in the next 2 days. I congratulate the Center for Early Childhood Education Development and its team for having organized this conference. And let me request Dr. Monimalika Dey to now deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you very much.